Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the True Life Podcast. I hope everybody's having a beautiful day. I hope the sun is shining. I hope the birds are singing. I hope the wind is at your back. I hope maybe you got the day off and you're eating some mushrooms. You're doing something beautiful with the person you love. That's what I hope you guys are doing. But if you're hanging out with us on the show today, which I'm stoked you are, I got an incredible show for you guys today. Incredible artist, filmmaker. Let me just go ahead and give you a quick rundown on this incredible individual. So today I'm joined by an artist, a philosopher, and a world builder in the truest sense, Brandon Singletary. He doesn't just create art, he architects entire realities, forging bridges between the cosmos and human cognition. From mesmerizing short films to intricate philosophical art books, from vast series of illustrations to a living, breathing map of worldviews, aesthetics, and ways of creation. Brennan is constructing a new visual and conceptual language. His work isn't just seen, it's experienced. It's a doorway into the infinite, an invitation to reimagine what's possible when imagination meets structure, when art meets philosophy, when vision meets execution. So strap in. Brandon, how are you today?
I'm doing all right. Thank you. Thank you, George, for having me on. Happy to be here.
Yeah, man.
Really excited
Me
to see
too.
where we're going to go here. Yeah.
Me too, man. I want to just briefly tell everybody I think it was on LinkedIn where we met, and I saw this video of you, and I went to YouTube and I checked it out. I'm gonna put all the links down there. And some of these videos were just mesmerizing. It's like anything I've ever seen. But before we jump into that, man, I kind of wanted to back up the train a little bit, and maybe you could start with, some of who you are, how you got here, like some of your influences, man. I just want to throw it back to you wherever you want to start at, man. Let me know.
Yeah, who I am. Well, that's always tricky to answer, so I think I'll skip it for now. I think a lot of the things that I do will kind of assemble who I am in a sense. Ego tends to dissolve when you get to these to these particular areas, I suppose. But let's see, what do I? Yeah, I mean, your introductory description did a very excellent job, way more adequately than I could probably do myself. And it's like, yeah, that's pretty good. In my own words, I'm an artist. I weave together philosophy and other concepts from other fields of science, from the natural sciences, and I try to see if I can make something of a world or a series of worlds. Or really, each world is kind of like just a refinement of the previous version of it, and I tend to do updates every single year or so, or at least that's when I feel compelled to blitz through a whole other new world creation project. So yeah, that more or less sums things up without getting too deep into the details, which I'm sure we'll get into soon.
Yeah, absolutely. For me, I wrote down some notes, and I wrote down that like your work feels it's like a fusion of ancient mysticism and modern philosophy and speculative futurism. When I was watching Desire, I almost felt as if it was, I would say biblical, but I don't think that really describes it because there's so much more in there. It's sort of like this sci-fi world building meets religion meets meaning, like there, right? Like, who are your influences, man? Like, how does this come about?
Influences. Well, at the time of Desire, which was the short film you mentioned, let me see. I think Jung, Heraclitus, Nietzsche, maybe. I think that was the main. Those are the main influences at the time. I didn't get too deep into philosophy yet. I mean, before. I mean, during that era, I guess I also read a little bit of Kant. I think I was more or less just getting into philosophy at that time. But yeah.
So, in the process of it, carry on, please.
Then after that, that's when that's when I started digging a little bit more into it, because I wanted to try and take Desire and see how much further the ideas could go. It's like, well, they started, like, Desire started off as a D&D sort of world of sorts, and it was super fictional at the time. And then I was like, okay, so after the D&D thing, then Desire developed, because I wanted to like branch out away from I guess the core factions of the fictional story that I've made at the time. And then I made them as attractive as I possibly could, taking their ideologies and pushing them all the way into the vast reaches of the cosmos. And then after the short film concluded, I was like, okay, let's see how much further I can push these, and it turned into Metaforma, which is an art book, and each, I guess you could say, element was turned into like a symbol of sorts, into a mathematical S sort of symbol that I could use for a language, or at least the semblance of one. And during those times, I mean, the main influence for Metaforma was Ludwig Wittgenstein and his Tractatus. Wonderful work, especially with at the time that I found it in. It was pretty much exactly what I was looking for, and I didn't necessarily even know that such a thing existed at the time, and I just found that wonderful. So that's why it took on the appearance that it did, and I'm somewhat thankful for that. Then let's see, Aquinas was another influence during that time. So was Leibniz. I think I'm blanking out on a number of other ones, but yeah, those were the core influences at that time too. And since then, I've just kind of been orbiting around a few other ones, maybe a little bit of Deleuze, but yeah, that's pretty much it.
Man, it's music to my ears. I have another friend that comes on with me sometimes, Dr. David Solomon, and he's a medieval mystic scholar. We talk about all these crazy texts, like he goes off on Aquinas, and then he talks about these books like The Cloud of Unknowing, and obviously Carl Jung too. And so I can see that in your work. Like it is really, it has a lot of gravity towards it. Like I felt when I was watching it, like I just kept getting pulled in deeper and deeper. And I'm like, dude, what does this mean right here? It is so contagious, man. And I've never seen anything like it. Like I know people within the sound of my voice that may not be watching, they're going to be like, Jesus Christ, George, why didn't you put up a clip? What's wrong with you? But I want everyone to go down to the YouTube. If you're within the sound of my voice, go check this out. It's like nothing you've ever seen before. It's really mesmerizing. What led you to this? Like, I'm so curious, like how one finds themselves making this. Like, you're like a seeker. Were you searching out these ancient philosophers? Are you attracted to it on some level? Are you looking at your shadow, or what's going on over here, man?
Yeah, a number of my friends at the time were Jungian, or at least they're deeply invested in Jungian, and they found the development of my things interesting for a number of reasons, I'm sure. But when I when I showed them the video, it's like, yeah, to them clearly Jungian influence, and I showed them the book. They're like, okay, you're committing some sort of alchemical thing. You're doing alchemy. It's really what they were saying. It's like, this is an alchemical tractus, and I was like, maybe so. I didn't really know what that meant at the time, of course, and I only like vaguely understood Jung a little bit. But I was like, yeah, upon reflection, even now, it's like, yeah, I guess that was an alchemical tractus, because it was a very difficult and arduous thing to make. As for how I got there, it's I guess I was in a sense a seeker. I was trying to find comprehensive answers to where I am. Like, what exactly is reality? What is the world? How can I grasp it most easily, or at least can I is there a way to typify this world? Because at the time I was also well, I guess that's why there was Jungian influence. I was into his psychological types, his cognitive functions of sorts, and I just wanted to like, I found a few things that I kind of disagreed with them, so I just kind of reformulated the structure a little bit. I was like, okay, yeah, and that kind of formed the basis of the different categories in desire, at least, and by proxy everything else that came afterwards. But yeah, I think the long and short of it was I wanted answers, and I wanted to try and merge these psychological types with these with these cosmic patterns of sorts, with I guess, well, yeah, astronomy and also cosmogony and all of that. Yeah, cosmology. I get those mixed up. However, yes.
It's I zook out on language sometimes, like a lot. Like I'm fascinated by it. I'm fascinated by the evolution of language, and when I say language to you, like what comes to your mind when I say, hey, what are your thoughts on language? I'm going somewhere with this. Just want you to know.
Yeah, sure. But whenever I hear the word language, I always think of syntax and how things are well ordered and well, yeah, structured and conducted in reality. Because I guess even now, I do hold the idea that everything can be seen as a kind of language, or at least in some sense. I don't think I hold on to that idea particularly strongly anymore, but yeah, that's my first thought.
Yeah, I, when I look at the video and I'm so stoked to get to talk to lots of people, but I feel like we're on this cusp of our language changing from completely verbal to a more perfect logos, if you will. I think it was blank on the guy's name, but Alexandria of damn it, I can't think of the guy's name. Long story longer, it seems that the imagery is moving in a way that makes more meaningful language. And I think that that's one of the things I grasped when I was looking at your videos is like, this is really speaking to me, not only on a verbal level. It's not only coming through language, but it's like, it's coming through with such powerful imagery that I am able to create my own meaning from it on some level. Do you see our language changing in a way that's becoming more meaningful with images on top of syntax and on top of the verbal aspect of it?
Yes. Yeah, I can somewhat speak to that particular experience too. It's kind of why my work is the way that it is. I do want people to try and grasp it and apprehend a kind of, their own interpretation of it, because, that's, the basic function of art, right? But I want my philosophy
Yes.
to be something that is interpreted, something that they can to see philosophy as a kind of art in itself. As for the changing of language into more of a pictorial or symbolic sense of it, yeah, I guess I haven't really been paying too much attention to trends in that way, but I suppose it would make sense for them to kind of be going in that direction. Like letters and text in general seem to not be as, or at least increasingly less common, I suppose, or at least less favored. Yeah, it's an interesting development, that's for sure.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Marshall McLuhan, and he's got this great book called The Gutenberg Galaxy. And in that book, he talks about the way in which the printing press gave us ideas like uh, exact repeatability. Before you had the printing press, it was always like storytellers, but then you get this printing press and it's like, I can tell you exactly what it said, but that leaves out so much. It leaves so much interpretation out. It leaves so much of the individual creating the story in their own mind. And it seems like we're on the cusp of that change again. Like when I see your videos and I see other people that I really admire creating this new type of artwork, it's like a whole new change on language, man. I'm so excited about it, man. What is your do you think maybe it's possible that we could see ourselves in the near future with radical changes like the printing press gave us? Like maybe large language models are changing the landscape.
All I can say is maybe. I'm not sure how much different language could get beyond, the means of communication changing. It's like we can. I don't know. It's like I have recent thoughts on why I guess some philosophers find the concept of color so fascinating, and qualia and all of that. It's like, well, you can't really apprehend, or rather, you can't really describe color because it is a thing used to describe things. Or at least that's my rough thoughts on it right now. It's a mode of communication. You can use colors to communicate many different things. You could even probably make a legitimate language out of it if you just string together a bunch of combinations with colors and have them mean specific things and create the associations within people's minds. It's like, yeah, of course, those are linguistic elements, you could say. But yeah, beyond that, I'm not sure how much more a language could really change, because you still need you need basic elements in order to have the thing to communicate, and then you need a grammar or a syntax, and then you need to convey it in some way, and have a medium to convey it. I mean, you you can't really speak with colors, of course, but you can use screens and just I don't know about flashing colors in front of people's faces to communicate, but even still, yeah, I think you get what I mean.
Totally. I totally do. it just seems like it's so mind-blowing to me because on some level language is like our greatest gift, but so many times I find myself talking past someone or not really thoroughly understanding what they say. And you start thinking about so much arguments in life, whether it's with your loved one or it's a war or something like that. It's like this misunderstanding on some level. Like we're not really communicating. And I'm hopeful, at least in my mind, that that's what the large language models are teaching us, is like really how to communicate meaning. And when I see short videos like yours or some of the work you're doing, it gives me hope because I see real meaning in there. And even though you and I or some of my friends could watch your video and we may not get the exact same message, I think we get a very similar feeling. I think that that is where the language is really evolving. It's like, oh shit, we're interpreting this maybe through our own filter, but we're feeling the same thing. Like that's unique to your work, man. I'm mind blown by it. Thank you.
Well, I'm glad my work actually achieves that. I mean, speaking of that, I mean, you did clarify what you may have meant when you were talking about language there. It's like, yeah, so LLMs, they would be able to, they're very good at generalization, and people are more inclined to take in general bits of information. And I do find that people are becoming, more well informed about a variety of different topics, and that's just going to continue happening as LLMs become more sophisticated and more integrated in our lives. And it's like, well, if people just are informed and have a broad enough understanding of things, whatever someone means, they'll probably be able to get it intuitively because of all of the other connections that they've made in their mind already, or because of the ones that were formed while they're doing all of their, I guess, unconscious research. But yeah, it's that is an interesting way forward. It's like technology could make it so that communication is more well adapted. It's like you can take any given sentence and it would just be well adapted to any other sentence that someone says, or be able to be interpreted in. It's like this. It's like previously there were only a few ways to interpret a sentence. Now there are dozens of ways to interpret a sentence, or have a different that many ways of interpreting a sentence, and have it also be correct at the same time. It's an interesting sort of smoothing of a communication that naturally happens, it seems, as we progress forward in time. Yeah
I agree. I got a first question coming in here. This one comes from our friend Clint Kiles, and he says, what's the foundation of your creative universe? Is it a single idea, a feeling, or something more ineffable?
That's a good question. I did consider that. Let's see.
Take your time, man.
Single idea, ineffable. I think it probably is a singular idea. Ineffability comes much, much later for me. It's definitely, I'm kind of detached from my feelings too, so that's probably not it. But yes, it's more of a core idea, and I suppose that idea is a something of an imperative to try and get to the bottom of things. That is likely at the heart of everything I'm trying to do, a kind of motion, moving toward something. And this idea of motion does kind of lend itself toward it's more recently in recently developed iterations of the idea. Motion takes a more central role in how all of my things are constructed now. There's nothing to show for it at the moment, at least not really. At best, things are only alluded to, but in due time, yes, I'll likely have a new project to show that that motion is the heart of things. And I guess that would be the core concept or the core idea. Yeah, motion.
I love it. When you speak of motion, is it a pushing feel? Is it something pushing you, or is it something pulling you?
I would say neither, actually. It's like the idea of Deleuze's difference, or at least I'm borrowing from it. It's just I imagine like a color shifting from one shade to the next. It's kind of like that. That's the kind of motion I tend to imagine. Gradation, transition from one thing to another. Yeah. It doesn't necessarily have to be pushing or pulling, though. But it's like, depending on where you are standing in that gradation, it could be one of the other. Yeah.
Love it. I love the description of that. It has the feeling of multiple things being true at once. You know, for me, it's like, I remember not too long ago, I took this giant dose of mushrooms. I remember sitting like and just seeing all these directions of my life. Like, I could be this person, I could be that person, I could be this person, I could be that person. And like, they were all, I could simultaneously live them and see them at the same time. Like, it's such an incredible aspect and change in ratio and change in perception. And I feel like so much good art comes from these abilities of people to see and live in not only the eternal now, but like the eternal yesterday, the eternal tomorrow. What are your thoughts on that? Is that too crazy?
No, I don't think it's crazy at all. Yeah, a lot of great art comes from being able to either synthesize a bunch of, in a convergent sense, synthesize a bunch of perspectives into one image, or to take an image and divert it without it becoming completely, without, you being able to, yeah, I guess it's like, you take the viewer with all of these different perspectives, you showcase all of them and then guide them through to a common point anyway. It's like, you're taking them on a journey versus concluding a journey, I suppose you could say. Yeah. Like a concluded the journey for many people, I
I
suppose,
like
at the
that.
same time in that
When we're talking
synthetic
about
sense.
journeys, I always is it here's an interesting question. When I hear the word journey, I always think of the hero's journey, and you think about so many stories that were told based on that. I think of Joseph Campbell and some of the incredible myths that he told. What is your take on mythology? Has mythology influenced you? We've spoken about some of your influences as far as mystics and thinkers and philosophers, but what about mythology?
Hmm. I would say yes, but it was likely unconscious because I'm not much of a myth reader. I don't like reading fiction or engaging with it all that much.
Mm.
So, yeah, it definitely has. It's influenced just about everybody, I would say. Yeah.
Well, how come you don't like reading fiction?
Well, let me see. I know that after completing Desire and Metaforma, I just kind of fell out of fiction. It didn't do anything for me after a while. I mean, and even before then, it was like, I don't know. I guess I never really engaged with it much as a kid, and I never really developed the fascination toward it. At least, as a kid, even now, it's like, watched cartoons and all of that. What were those myths? There were definitely stories, and they have influenced me. It's just, I don't know. I can't say with certainty.
I don't know if anybody could say with certainty. The people that do say with certainty, watch out for those guys. They don't know what they're talking about.
Yeah.
Oh, who do you think is your audience, Brandon? Like, do you have a certain audience in mind when you make films, or is it just like, I'm going to make this and let this message go out to the people that find it?
Um, I never really had an audience in mind for the first two large projects that I've done, which is Desire and Metaforma. It was definitely not for anyone else. It was definitely for me. Afterwards, it became more about other people. I started thinking about, okay, how can I do this more deliberately to try and get this to
Mm.
who needs this? And it's a little bit trickier, but I think I'm starting to come to who is probably looking for it. And yeah, they would indeed be other seekers, people that are more than likely like, the ones that I found to be the most interested or the most affected by my works would be the ones that were, that are maybe currently around my age. Like at the time when I made it, I was about 21 through, I mean, Metaform was completed when I was 24. So that sort of range, 21 through 24, those are the ones that are usually trying to, grasp their identity, because they are, they're now just, thrust it into the world and they don't know what's going on anymore. Those are the ones that tend to be most affected by my work, even though I don't necessarily target them all that much. They tend to just kind of fall into it seems. I've not made much effort in marketing my stuff all that well, but or at least not the old stuff. But yeah, that's usually the target, I suppose, or the people that the demographic that tends to like my stuff the most. Yeah, or funnily enough, yeah, other PhDs or people that have completed their studies, they also take a strong liking to my work. Like, I cannot say as to why. It's likely because there's just a lot seemingly in there. I don't know, but
There is a lot in there. Like it's again for people within the sound of my voice. Go down to the show notes, go down to his channel, and check out the videos. They're amazing, and there's so much in there, and they're contagious. Like I think you've found a way to capture contagion, which is a pretty remarkable thing to do. Have you ever thought about that?
I have not. Whenever I think of contagion in regards to like creations, I usually think of memes, and it's like, well, I guess memes don't have
Yeah,
to necessarily be all about comedic things. It's like, yeah, if something catches on and it's like really hard to get out. That actually is an innately very viral thing, I suppose. Yeah, and I suppose my works do have that kind of quality, and I do kind of want that sort of thing for my works too. I try to ensure that they are not easily forgettable. Um, and how I choose to do that kind of varies by medium. Yeah, that's for sure.
yeah, yeah. No, it brings up this idea of like when I think about contagion and I think about language and imagery, I think that they're alive. I feel like once you create something, you give it life, and then it finds its way into the world to the same way water flows. Like it starts moving through the zeitgeist, starts moving through the minds of others, and it's maybe filtered in a different way or changes shape in a different way. But I really get that vibe when I look at your work and some other really cool artists that I look at. What is language alive to you? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I very much do believe language is alive. It's actually something of an idea that I am constantly reminded of whenever I feel the need to return to metaforma. It's the idea that what like any sort of movement that you make is going to be rippling through the world forever. It's never really going to just terminate or
Yeah.
end. It's like, yeah, it'll merge and blend into the environment. It'll like meld into the walls, and then the walls will also reverberate outwards as well. It's like, yeah, all of that happens, but the output never really changes. The like whatever you were to say, because it's another byproduct of motion or in expression into the world. It's never really going to just terminate or end. It's like, yes, locality is also a rather important thing here, but eventually it's going to reach the outer limits of the of our solar system and onwards. It's never really going to just stop. It's or rather, it'll be synthesized with a whole bunch of other things that are likely happening at the exact same time. And sure enough, events will probably transpire in ways you never really considered that they would. Or at least so long as you're paying attention, I suppose. But yeah.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's well said. Do you feel that way? Like you've spoken some of your influence, whether it's Lichtenstein or Jung or all these incredible, you know, people that you have read or listened to or studied. It's almost like the artwork, their language, their ideas, like you said, they don't ever die and they're there for everybody. If you're willing to kind of do the work, they're willing to inspire you if you're willing to sit down with them on some level. Like it's so beautiful to me to think of like, here's all these masters, man. Like look what they did. And they'll talk to you right now and they will show you and they'll try to tell you. And like that's a beautiful way to feel, right? Do you feel the same way or what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of I'm always constantly reminded of just how strange, I mean, even just words are. It's they I mean you just said it yourself, really.
Yeah.
These words and stuff, they just last. It's like the concept of reverberation, and it never ends. Like you open a book, there they are. They're just, I don't know. It's, I mean, borderline ineffable. It's just, I mean, I guess what makes something ineffable is just how much like how much stuff is there to explain, really. And yeah, words are definitely that. There's a lot that goes on with words. Hard to get it down into a succinct and compact way. Yes.
I love it. I love it. Okay, here we got Desiree coming in from Palm Desert, and she says, "If your art was a portal, where would it lead? What kind of beings or civilizations would exist on the other side?"
Hmm. I The main purpose of my work, at least attempt for this to be the case is to ensure that I'm trying to recreate this world so that people can grasp what it is that they are looking at when they are in reality in itself, in our shared reality here. So if I were to make if my works were a portal, they would just lead exactly here again. I am not one to imagine any other kind of universe because I don't like those other kinds of universes. There's always something wrong with them, and that kind of bothers me. But yeah, I guess that's kind of why I never really was into myth, or at least one reason is like there's always something off about them. I don't know, but yeah.
It's true. There is something off about it. What about dimensions? Does dimensions hold the same sort of negative connotation as alternative universes?
Yeah, to me, I never really liked the idea of multiple dimensions. It's a little strange. It's like I tend to see a dimension as like a mathematical dimension. It's like, yeah, that's just another axis of motion. It's like it's like, okay, 4D, okay, that could be time maybe if you really want it to be, but 5, it's like, okay, that's another time dimension. So anything after 3 is just time. Okay. Seems redundant, but sure. I can see the practical uses of it, but yeah, it's like, why would you go beyond 5 at that point, though? It's like, yeah, I don't know. Anyway, I digress.
It's beautiful, man. I love learning about the way you think and what goes into the artwork.
Yeah.
We got one more coming in here. This one is from Dennis. Dennis says, do you think art has the power to create real ontological shifts? Can it change the way people see reality itself?
Can art create ontological shifts? Somewhat. I do think that people have an innate pattern as to how they would see the world, and that would likely not change that much unless they were to, completely reconfigure their neural chemistry by, taking substances or doing really deep meditation or other creative avenues, like indeed creating artwork. But even still, I do think that, a basic foundation will always be there. It's like, art will likely reinforce what's already there, but I can't really see it changing it that much unless, again, you completely reconfigure the nervous system in a way. Can art do that? Maybe a little. I'm not sure. Well, because everything that is taken in will naturally affect the nervous system and all of that. But yeah, I would say that there can be some change, but it will not make fundamental change. And I find that to be a very important thing anyway, because I wouldn't want to change someone's core foundation all that much. I just want to enhance it, because that in itself is a very powerful thing to have, an enhanced foundation. That means you're living closer to your truer self, I suppose. Yeah.
Yeah, it's sort of whenever I think about changing the foundation, I think of, maybe that's not the right way to say it, but I always think of uncovering something, not like you found something, but like you uncovered it, like it was always there. Like, look at that, I took that off, and now I feel much better. I don't even need to hold that shame or guilt anymore. Like, look at that, let's put that down. Well, it's my mom's anyway. I don't like that, You started thinking about all these ways in which artwork can help you uncover these things about yourself, man. It's nuts.
Yes, exactly.
Let's dive a little bit more into the inner. Yeah, I think so too. Let's dive into this. I got another question here that comes up. The intersection of art and philosophy. Your work seems to exist at the intersection of philosophy and art. Do you think art is philosophy in visual form, or do they serve different masters?
Art, philosophy in visual form. Do they serve different masters? I think they serve the same master. Yeah, they serve the same master. Art is philosophy in visual form. That is possible sometimes, though. With philosophy, it's you're trying to communicate, something, some sort of. I guess I don't know. I mean, a common notion is that philosophy is art, And that's you could say that anything is art, really. If it's any kind of expression, it's a kind of art. um yeah, I think my brain is like sliding away from the question. It's kind of like melding into itself over and over. I don't know. I think the answer would be yes. That would be my succinct answer.
It's interesting. I know some other art. I know some really cool artists, and myself sometimes. And I'm curious if you ever have this problem. Sometimes, like I'll make something that I really like, and I'm like, that looks spectacular. But then I look at it again, I'm like, it's empty. It's a beautiful picture, but there's no meaning in it. Do you ever have like issues like trying to infuse meaning into an image that's already beautiful?
Hmm. Does it have to be my work, or is it
No, it
someone
could just be just art in
else's?
general, or like wherever you want to take it.
Hmm. Okay. Meaning, meaning tends, or at least interpreting things to have something. Yeah. So when something means something to you, it's usually some sort of correlate feeling that you have about the artwork, or at least that's my thoughts on meaning at the moment. It's with that, I tend to find difficulty in finding meaning in other people's work. I mean, granted, unless I'm prompted to find meaning, I will probably not really see it unless it's like unless the work is beautiful enough, or at least aligns with the visual patterns that I like the most. Or at least I should say fits my taste and preferences. I'm probably not going to be able to puzzle out what it is about, or have much of an interest in doing so. But it's like, if something is beautiful and it fits my taste and preferences and all of that, then it'll have an immediate effect, and it would mean something to me. As for what that would be, I would be puzzling it out for naturally probably years. But yeah, that's the extent of that, I suppose. Yeah, I guess I don't have much trouble in finding in meaning in those kinds of works. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's an awesome question, and it's a beautiful answer. I think about I was revisiting some of like I'm a big fan of the murals. Like I was just looking back at like Diego Rivera's murals, and it tells these stories on some level. And I've always admired like the connection between art and rebellion on some level. What are your thoughts on art and rebellion and movements and that aspect of it?
Hmm. Arts and rebellion. That is something that I haven't looked too deeply into, at least not yet. I think my philosophical thoughts were like on the cusp of political movements, since it's a philosophy about
Mhm.
motion and all of that, and I found that interesting. I didn't, go into that territory because I didn't think I was quite ready for that yet. But it's I don't think I can offer too many comments on it at the moment. Um, so yeah, I suppose I'll leave the question there. I don't really have much to say about it. Um, yeah.
Okay, here we go. What do we got here? We got Neil coming in. He says, you've built a living, breathing map of worldviews and aesthetics. If someone steps into this map, how do they navigate? Is it structured like a language, a dream, or a ritual?
I My aspiration is for it to be a language, but I think it is more like a dream. It's they would be able to navigate it by their own natural preferences and tastes. Whatever strikes them most immediately is usually the thing, or at least from what I've noticed, that's usually the thing that they will align with the most, or be the thing that best describes who they are, and then they'll just be orbiting around in that particular realm. And because I do think that each individual realm is latent within everybody's, I guess, psyche. They will probably look a little bit here and there into the other ones, but not feel as strongly compelled. But maybe because for example, if we have like 3 sections here and they pick one section that is their most preferred, then that is innately a kind of gradient that but between all 3 of them that will kind of give them a basic blueprint of how they tend to be. It's like, for example, at least in this older version, or in the older versions of these ideas, it's like someone would pick, I guess, the red sort of category, and they would secondarily pick the yellow category, and then just kind of go blue seems kind of lame and stupid. That's the basic gradient, and that would be a basic pattern of who they are. So they kind of just get invested or involved and participating within this sort of world, much like how a world is supposed to be, or at least how the world around us, the shell world around us, tends to be. You kind of participate in it, and as you interact with it, you end up learning more about it as well as yourself. And that's what I want all of my worlds to characterize.
They say art imitates life. Do you feel that like these particular videos and the short ones that I checked out, did those imitate your life?
I would say they imitate my cognitive patterns, not necessarily my life. Because desire definitely, or at least how it's structured, is very much a map of my own preferences, and other people participating within that world are just kind of contrasting themselves within my set of preferences, or at least how my cognition seems to be mapped out in a Jungian sense. Yeah. And in doing so, they can create their own sort of map of their own world if they feel so inclined. Yeah.
So we talked about desire a little bit, but can you give us like a background on some of the other films and just lay it out there? Like, well, let's go one by one. What were the other 2? What were they about? And what did you get out of them? And what do you hope other people get out of them?
Films. I think the other film that I made was Aforma, and I guess that was just a set of presentations that came after Metaforma, and I primarily wanted to focus on the psychological typification system that I primarily wanted to talk about in Metaforma, but I was too enmeshed in wanting to understand how everything else worked. But Aforma is kind of a reflection of what I really wanted to talk about in Metaforma, and I am unsure if I can really give too much more information about it. It's just me laying out the system as to how I think it should operate. Just me basically just updating how things were laid out before. Nowadays, I can barely remember it, and I don't really subscribe to it anymore. So, and that's about the extent of what I can really say about it. But I also tried to in Aforma tried to link together the basic patterns of motion that nature seems to have, and how people's preferences tend to line up with those particular areas in nature. And I don't know. I suppose that's the extent of it. That happened in Metaforma as well, but no, this one was supposed to be a little bit more digestible for people, as opposed to the madness that is the book. Yeah.
Did you feel different? Like, some people prefer writing, some people prefer producing films. Like, what were some of the things you liked about each of them, and maybe you disliked about each of them?
Yeah, desire. If I were to okay, so the things I liked, I mean, the fact that it was so powerful, and people can feel how I was probably feeling when I made it, because that was a kind of process that it made me cry like a number of times while I was making it, and I guess people felt that, even though it was
Totally.
like yeah, that's one thing I liked about it. It was emotionally deep, and it still gets me today whenever I do whenever I have the courage to return to it. But it's the things I dislike, the fact that it was just a little too verbose, and maybe after the 6-minute mark, it kind of takes a bit of a dip in his comprehensibility and then spikes back up toward the end. That kind of has always bugged me about it, but that's just kind of how it goes. But then again, like there's a specific part in the middle where the comprehensibility it kind of reaches kind of an apex. It's like it's familiar, you can understand it, but at the same time, you also are mystified by it. I kind of like that. That happens at the midway point, and I think that was a good balance that spontaneously happened. Moving to Metaforma, I think that the main thing. Okay, well, we should start with likes. But I think I like the structure of it. I really like the structure of it. It's it's probably the most comprehensive thing I've made to date, and likely will remain so. I guess there is something to be said about difficult works, because once you get through it, you feel good that you got through it, and if you were to return to it, it would become increasingly familiar, and that's something that people have reported from reading that particular work. Again, if they if they had the courage and patience to get through all of it. But that is one thing I like about it. The fact that it is rather difficult and technical in its own sort of way. What I don't like about it is that exact same thing. It's also very technical, and it takes a long time to get through, and it kind of consumes you. If you like, when I was editing the book, I could only edit like a few pages at a time because of how much it was. It was just overwhelming. But that's it just kind of consumes you in its own sort of way, and I think that's a good thing and a bad thing. And from what else is published, I think a forma is another thing. It's kind of just an in-between. I don't have much to like or dislike about it. It was just me doing a few corrections, but yeah, that's those are the major projects to date. But yeah.
I love it. I love learning that and getting to hear the artist's view of the likes and the dislikes and the complications and the technicality. In Desire, like, you scored it unbelievably. Like, the music behind the scenes, like, I cried too. I was like, whoa, and like I felt like it was synesthesia. I could like see the music when it was going on. Like, how can you tell me or try your best to explain the relationship between the scoring and the video and the process you used to do that?
So I think the process was that I would try and, so I did all of the writing first. The writing all came from I did a write-up of Desire first. It was a very intricate and laid out sort of, I don't know how to describe it. I guess you can call it a wiki of all of the written information of Desire and how all of the dynamics work and all of that. That came first. And then when I got around to starting to want to do the video, I was like, okay, so I'll just take out some of the text here. I'll try and fit it to be something that can be narrated. So I did a bunch of editing for the writing. And then I believe I recorded all of the writing, I narrated all of the writing. And then I tried to find music that would fit what I was narrating. And then that's when I started looking for imagery to try and compile on top of all of the audio stuff. So all of the audio came first. Then the visual stuff came second. And I did throw a few of my illustrations in there too, and that, I suppose, came before all of the recording. So I was kind of just assembling all of the pieces of all of the visual stuff after I handled all of the audio. Yep.
What did you go to school to learn how to do all this stuff? Is it something you kind of just learned on your own? Was it a relationship of both of them, or like, how is it just trial and error, or how does that work?
Yeah, I mean, I guess learning is trial and error is a part of learning, but
Totally.
that is, it's most of these particular skills were self-learned. I did go to school for a year and a half, or at least college for a year and a half, an art school, though didn't have the money, couldn't continue, but I just kept doing my own thing anyway. And yeah, I just sort of I just got better at these talents here. I mean, let me see. I picked up video editing when I was maybe well 11, I suppose, and it's a skill that I just kind of held on to. I suppose I just needed to use it. Yeah, and drawing, I've been apparently doing it since I was 2 or 3, according to my mom. So that's a thing there. Audio, I don't have much skill with audio. At least I don't really think I do. I didn't really practice it. I just sort of I know what I'm looking for. I can kind of it's almost like being able to envision actual images in my mind, but I do it with audio too, in a way. That's yeah.
Yeah,
There's
it's
music has certain moods, and I'm just kind of looking for those moods. That's all.
yeah, it's I'm amazed at the way in which you dressed it with so much style. Like it has all the elements, and I think that comes usually from someone who's self-taught. That comes from having the eye of it. I'm not taking anything away from the people that have gone to school and crushed it, and I know tons of people have done that, but it seems to me that I find myself having the affinity for the person that found a way to translate their vision into reality without having someone tell them it's wrong, without someone having to say, oh, that angle's too crazy, you didn't use the right tool there. Like there's a certain sort of raw emotion that comes from someone who figured out a way to do it. It's like taking the road less traveled. It's beautiful, man.
Thank you. Yeah, it's yeah. In many ways, I do agree. If you go through schooling and stuff, I mean, you become hyper specialized a lot of the time, and
Sure.
it doesn't stop people from like doing their own personal study too. Of course, if they have the time to do
Yeah.
that sort of thing.
Right.
And I think that's the main restriction there, time. Um, yeah, that's about all I can really say about that because I don't know. I guess I was just afforded a lot of time to learn an array of skills and just get decent enough at them to combine them to be um, impactful. Yeah,
Yeah. Sometimes I feel like the role of I feel like we're all artists. I feel like each
yeah,
individual, if they sat down for a moment and they really started trying to figure out what it is they're passionate about, they could begin walking the footsteps of creation on that path. And I want to inspire more people to do that. And I think watching your film is a huge inspiration for me and everybody listening. The schools are awesome, but on some level, I feel like they almost design the creativity out of people. Like here is a set of people we're going to study. And if you just study those people, you're not really studying the person you want to study. You're not really digging for the philosopher that gives you meaning. And I want to encourage people, like whether you go into school or whether you got a computer or you have a sketch pad, sit down and do it. Just create this thing you think is beautiful and watch out for the critic in your mind, man. Tone that guy down or tone that girl down and just crank up the mania one. Right? Is that too crazy? What do you think, man?
I would say crank up both.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
It's
Why? Why
like
are we cranking them both up?
it's like okay, when it comes to the inner critic, that's definitely something that can stop somebody from making things and from putting things out there. It happens to me all the time. The thing is, it's also it has its good side to
Yeah.
it too, especially if you want something to be really really good, you need that critic to be there. You need to ramp it
Yeah.
all the way up. It's like you ramp it up and then you turn it down so you can actually publish the thing. Otherwise,
It's true.
it's gonna
Yeah.
bother you
Right.
forever. And yeah, it's like I guess my inner critic does lend itself toward my philosophical thoughts. I don't know what to do when it comes to publishing them, and I think Metaforma was me just kind of throwing it out there and not really thinking about it. But now it's like, okay, now I want to be more deliberate. I want to be careful about these things because I know how impactful these things are with people, and I don't want to put if I put in the wrong message, it'll cause a bit of a problem, I think. But yes, it's about being very very careful about what you put out there at that point. But that is the extent of my inner critic at the moment. I think I have a decent hold on it, primarily criticizing the technical skill of things. Like I tend to not be too worried about it now, but of course, when you're beginning, that's going to be like the introductory stage for what it means to have an inner critic, I suppose. And once you bypass that and have enough people telling you that your work is good, maybe that's not, of course, probably not enough. Maybe you need to just continue working through it and continue publishing things to become okay with publishing it. Then it's like, yeah, that's that becomes the end of it, I suppose. Yeah.
Yeah, it's well said. Recently read Rick Rubin's new book, and there's some real cool quotes in there. And one of them is, if the project has 3 mistakes in it, it might not be ready. But if it has 6 mistakes in it, it might be. You know, if it has like 9 mistakes, then it's probably ready. Like, you just looked at it so long, you're like, oh, this thing, I gotta change that thing.
Yeah, it's like if the moment you're in your critiquing mode for your own pieces, and it's like the things that you can pinpoint are usually the things that do need to be fixed. But
Yeah,
the moment you publish something and then you notice that there are like a billion mistakes, it's like, yeah, that means it was definitely ready. That's when you were
yeah,
like confident in that moment that it was actually okay, and that's when it went out. Of course, it's like, yeah, with a keener eye, you'll be able to pinpoint the things that you missed. But yeah, that's about how it goes, especially for me. Yes. You just need that moment of confidence, and then you're good to go.
yeah. Duration seems to be a thing too. Like, if you spend a lot of time on a project and you look at it every day and you live it and you breathe it, pretty soon that feeling that was brought up, whether it's inspiration or shock or whatever it was in the beginning, or that attraction to it, it becomes calloused a little bit. You're like, I don't even know if that works anymore. You ever have that problem when you like when you're in it for so long? It's like you just have to trust that feeling you had in the beginning was right. What does that make sense?
Interesting. Hmm. I feel like I have a something of a parallel to it,
Okay.
though. It's like, I suppose. I mean, I suppose I'm still in the thick of it with, like, because all of these world iterations are just
Mm.
again iterations of each other. Yeah, I don't know. I guess I'm not quite out of it yet to really comment on it, but that might be how it is for me at the moment. Yeah.
All right, we got another question coming in here. This one's coming from Betsy from Oceanside. She says, if you had to describe the core grammar of your artistic language, what would it be? Are there reoccurring symbols, archetypes, or hidden rules?
What are the hidden rules? So I did say that motion was one. That
Right.
hasn't really left. Other ones. Let me see. Desire. Run through the structure in my head again real quick, or at least
Yeah,
try
do
to.
it.
Let me see. This, I think, with desire, I think the core elements haven't really left. They've just shifted around in priority a lot of the time. Um, Another archetype that has not left is how these categories tend to relate to the states of matter or the alchemical classical elements. Those are things that haven't left either. And only more recently I've began embracing that again. And it's like, okay, yeah, I'll just have gas and go leading into the fluid, and then leading into the solid and all of that. It's like, yeah, I think the one thing that I was missing throughout the entire development of this so far has been not being able to easily transmute between the elements. And after realizing that like a month ago, has been pretty good. But yeah, it's yeah, I think those are the core things that haven't really gone away, beyond just needing to connect it to the human being and to the universe simultaneously. That also hasn't gone away, but I suppose that's more of a goal as opposed to an archetype or a rule or a pattern. Yeah, um, that's about it. Just that they connect to the apparently observable elements of nature in different ways. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like nature is its own language. Sometimes you can go outside and just sit under a tree and watch how the little ecosystem underneath is like, look at these ants taking this cockroach apart over. But like it's this whole language, I think, that's like happening right in front of you. What's your relationship with nature and how has it inspired you?
Um, nature, inspiration. Yeah, just the way things move. That is to me
Yeah.
the language and the core grammar of how things are. I mean, it's reached a point. I mean, after Metaforma, I can say that when I finished it, just like I'd just be whenever I would need to cook dinner, I'd just be watching the steam like just do its
Yeah.
swirly motions. I just stand there for minutes at a time, and anytime I'm just kind of idling around and I'm just kind of observing something moving, I will just stare at it for as long as my attention holds, just very intently. It's like, wow, look at that thing go, huh? That is quite something that it's even happening at all. That is miraculous, right there. Even ants moving around, they're like picking apart a
Yeah.
cockroach. Yeah, that
Yeah.
there's a whole logic to that too, and it's not just within the motions as they appear to me at the moment. It's like the motions are happening within the ants too, and that has a whole cyclicity to it, and it's a wondrous thing to even just consider all of those different layers just coordinating together to produce a coherent image, no less. That is quite something.
It is. It's it's just poetry in motion. Like you stand back, look at it, they're all in this line. Where are they going? They're going over there. Like
they,
why?
they have their
Why is that
things
one
to
going?
do.
Yeah, they got their things to do, man. That's hilarious, Brennan. What is your personal philosophy for life? Like, do you have one that you live by, or are there some?
Hmm.
When I, when I say your philosophy of life, like, what do you think?
That to me makes me think of a kind of maxim of some kind, and I don't know. I don't know if I have one beyond things move, and that there's sort of innate nature to how things are
Yeah,
supposed to move, maybe. Or I don't know. For me, I'm not sure. I'm just kind of when it comes to I guess personal philosophies or maxims like that. I would desire to have like one simple rule that can be repeated, and it's just that I don't know, things happen. I think that's kind of the core of it. Things happen, but taking that and branching it out
yeah,
further, it's like you can elucidate all of the different ways that things happen, and adhering to all of those different ways based on where you fit in that sort of schema. That is yeah, that is in its way poetic, and it can give you I suppose a decent way of figuring out, well, one, where you fit in the world and what you're supposed to do in it. I mean, I suppose that is specific to everybody. I don't know. I feel like I'm drifting away from the question. However, I
no,
don't think I don't. It's hard for me to really describe it. That's what I will say. Things happen.
yeah. What what about where does tragedy fit into things happen?
Tragedy. Yeah, that is in a way. I mean, uh, well, when I guess I can say this, when it comes to things, tragedy is definitely a thing. I see any given thing as a kind of well, to maybe roll back my philosophy like a few weeks ago, maybe a month ago. It's like, yeah, a thing is technically a verb because it's made up of a bunch of different
Mm,
events. Tragedy is made up of a bunch of different events, and those events can affect people in certain ways that make them feel as though something is a tragedy, and indeed that makes it so that they are indeed true and real. Those are real things. All of these events are very real, and depending on how the given event that is tragedy affects somebody, they will be compelled to do something or not do something, depending on what they on the depending on the other events that make them up too. It's like some people will probably look at tragedy and not bat an eye, and other ones would feel very compelled to do something about it. It's the tragedy is a very personal thing. It's yeah, I when it I guess when I started moving into going back into maybe getting my philosophy out there again, my first point of contention, or at least to try and get myself going, was to try and pinpoint the things that I dislike about modern spirituality, or at least things in that sort of sphere. And it's like, well, a lot of it tends to just kind of ignore that problems are real things that people have an attachment to. It's like, yes, you could, I don't know, meditate for however many hours and not have anything to do with those circumstances, but you can't do that for everything, because that is to, in a way, defy, or at least deny, your own humanity. You have to care about things in order to do things. You need to care in order to move. If you don't care, you will naturally not move, and that, tends to overlap with depression and things like that. So why would you make yourself, or at least simulate depression within yourself? It's kind of strange. I don't know. Maybe I'll have to think about it more. But yeah.
I love it. I love weaving the idea of motion into tragedy and events, man. It's well done. Thank you for that. I think it's a cool perspective, and it's awesome. Let me see what else we got here. Who we have over here? This one is coming from Nick. He says, "Do you see artistic creation as a form of cosmology, a way to map the universe itself?"
Do I see what as a form of cosmology? Could you repeat that section?
Yeah. Do you see artistic creation as a form of cosmology?
My immediate response is no. It's the thing that makes the cosmology. But seeing artistic creation as cosmology, that is interesting. Taking a function and turning it into a cosmology itself. That is an interesting thing. I'll have to think more about that. But my immediate response is no. It is the thing that makes it, primarily.
All right. Awesome, Nick. Thanks for the question. If you could collaborate with any thinker, artist, or philosopher, living or dead, who would it be, and what would you create together?
When it comes to questions of collaboration, I tend to I tend to blank out. Like I'm not much of a collaborator.
Right.
However, to honor the spirit of the question, let me see. Who would I? I think it would be interesting to work with Alfred Whitehead or Ludwig Wittgenstein, even the earlies. Even if he's a bit I don't know what the word would be to describe him. However, I think we would make really interesting. So either one of those two, yes, or maybe Leibniz, maybe. Although, yeah, I don't know what we would actually make. Leibniz was more of an inventor, and I'm not one for inventation, or rather inventing. But Whitehead, we could probably make some interesting things. I don't know what that would actually be. Probably some sort of a philosophy, since the current ideas that I have about events and the like seem to overlap with his ideas from the cursory glance I've taken at it. So who knows? Maybe he would be able to formalize things a little bit to be more readily applicable to physics. That'll be cool, maybe. Yeah, I think if I were to collaborate with anyone, I would try and weave the concepts into modern physics, or at least to try and make something that would be usable for scientists. That'll be cool, I think.
Yeah. Sometimes I wonder, like, I spend a lot of time in the psychedelic community, and there seems to be, like, there's these two sort of, like, it almost seems like a helical model between, like, science and spirituality. I'm curious, like, what do you think is the relationship between science and spirituality? Are they same two sides of the same coin, or what are your thoughts?
There is the idea that tends to float around a little bit, that science is innately spiritual, and I could see that, or at least because it's grounded upon myths and the like. It's it is. Fascinating. I think they are one and the same. Spirituality and science, they both have a methodology to them. Science nowadays is primarily fixated upon falsification and the like. Um, and maybe a little bit of deduction too, but that's something that they are, the falsification, the need for empiricism or empirical evidence and the like, and falsifying truths and the like. It's like I don't know. Does spirituality as a method have that? Does it need that? I don't think it does. In that way that they would differ. And I think if both are treated as a way to understand nature in some way, with spirituality being about understanding the nature of one's feeling landscape or their array of meanings that compose them, and science as natural phenomena as they appear to us, then yeah, in those ways they would probably be different. The ends of the methodology perhaps would be different, but they have a common starting point, I would say. The desire to understand something about nature, because naturally feelings and meanings are all a part of nature too. Yeah.
Yeah, that's well said. I sometimes I feel like they're both prophecy. Like they're both trying to predict the future based on like a miracle or something. Just give me one miracle and then I'll
Yeah.
tell you what'll happen.
Yeah.
It's crazy. I don't know. I'm so excited about like the future. I'm excited about my life now, even though the motion of tragedy is happening in my life. Like when I look to see the artwork that's being produced and I see the tools that are available for creators and I see this creator economy kind of blossoming in a way that may not have been accessible to everybody previously. What's your take on like the creator economy and all these tools that are becoming available for people?
The creator economy. That is an economy that I am a part of. Let's
You are.
see. I am. Yeah. I was inspired to hop into it. Man, like last, yeah, November of 2023, or well, September of 2023. That's when I started to get into it, or at least more intentionally, more deliberately. I started on Twitter, and I tried to make it so that like the art that I was doing, it was clearly able to affect people in certain ways. I was like, yeah, let me see if I can turn this into something. It'll allow me to keep doing it, and I do have more things that I want to make. So let's try and see where that goes. Went through Twitter, got my first few clients there, and that was like a magical experience in itself, because I didn't think that was ever going to happen. But and then moved over to LinkedIn, and I'm just doing the same thing I did on Twitter, but it's way better, and LinkedIn's more suited towards it. But that's yeah, you have to kind of get into it. You have to know what it is. Well, one, that you have to know what you want. You have to know what other people want. You have to see where those things intersect, so that when you do go into helping people, or creating content and things like that, it's it'll land right, and there you'll have more people that would be, one, interested in the things that you have to say, and two, you'll be able to help out the people that would be best fitted for you to help. Yeah, tools. I mean, there are plenty of tools out there. I don't know. There's a lot of directions you can go in the creator economy, since I've been in it for a while now. But yeah.
Yeah, it does. It seems like it's the deeper you go, the bigger it gets. When you start going in there, look at this, look at that, look at that. What kind of clients are you helping, or what? I mean, I'm sure you could help out tons of people in varieties of ways, but what are some of the projects you've been working on for other people or helping them out with?
Yeah. So when I hopped into LinkedIn, I was just trying to radically find what space I best fit into. I joined like a couple of groups that I thought that was a half decent thing to do. I joined like a Jungian group of some kind, a whole lot of psychological groups or psychology related groups, wellness groups. And I was like, okay, this doesn't seem like the best way to grow. So I'm gonna try and directly connect with people that are that have these things in their I guess their about section, or whatever their tagline or headline. And I was like, okay, so psychedelics, it would make sense. People that are into psychedelics, probably they have either taken them, or they just simply work with people that are with them. And based on prior clients that I've had on Twitter, it's like, yeah, okay, so they have appreciation for consciousness. They like talking about the universe and nature and all of these big question stuff. So who are the people that talk about such things? Well, the people that are working with psychedelics primarily. And there are probably a whole bunch of other people there, but they're harder to pinpoint. They're like just individuals. They're not really, under one banner, really. But so I primarily work with the people in the psychedelic space, and I create artwork for them, provided that they like this sort of bleak, dark, black and white sort of style that I have going on at the moment. Some of them have starting to have been wanting color here and there, and that's a good opportunity to try and that rather has been a good opportunity for me to try and figure out how I can weave color into this granular style, which is cool. But yes, to answer the question, primarily psychedelics, people in the psychedelic space, and I have been just creating imagery for them. Sometimes it's just wall art for their office. Other times, I mean, right now I'm working on an oracle deck for an ethics center of sorts for psychedelics, and that has been a magical project in itself, naturally, due to the nature of oracle decks. But yeah, it's really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. What do they ever be like? All right, Brandon, we need you to come down to this retreat before you do any artwork. I want you to drink these 5 cups of ayahuasca. This is a prerequisite.
I don't think I would accept that job. I take a kind of egoic pride in not consuming substances personally for my own work. It's like I want to be able to reach these planes, these different vistas on my own. Well, on my own, because ideas kind of just take hold of you, and you don't have much control over that. But even still, not like without any sort of aid in all of that, without opening the floodgates, if you will. I want to try and keep it focused, constrained, and narrow. Because it's something I have noticed with psychedelic artists. It's like once they've taken psychedelics, the imagery that they see in these on their journeys will just completely saturate everything else that they make thereafter. And it's I don't necessarily think I want my artwork to look like that.
It's interesting. You said the way ideas can grab a hold of you. Like, is that how you see it? Like, are you like when you nurture an idea, is that idea something that was maybe whispered on the ether, or was it something you listened for, or was it something that you channeled, or that you saw? Like, how do the ideas grab a hold of you?
For me, it's kind of rather immediate. I cannot say that it takes the form of a voice or any kind of identity like other people would probably say that it does for them. Those instances I find very interesting. In my own imagination, I can imagine how such things can transpire, of course. But for me, it's not like that, and I always find it interesting that that the being possessed by ideas is different for different people. It's just that for me. Whenever I have an idea, I'm compelled to immediately just start just getting it down on paper, or at least whenever the idea is strong enough or developed enough or has been fed enough, I'll be able to put it out into the world so that it may indeed, to pull it back, to go back to like a prior part of the discussion, for it to finally live. And that is likely what I'm being used for ideas, for them to be given life in their own sort of way, because apparently they might need some of that. They might need to be alive for whatever reason. Yeah. And this is me just adding an identity to them. Whenever they happen to me, they don't really have an identity. It's just like I'm just in it, and I'm narrowed in, fixated, focused, perhaps somewhat obsessed over over just how to get this thing to manifest. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's a great description of it. Do you feel that like the ideas that get translated into reality mirror a large percentage of how they were when you saw them in your mind's eye? You know what I mean? Like, you know what I mean by that? Like sometimes when you create something, it's not exactly like it was in your mind. I don't know if something gets lost in translation or gets added in translation, but what's your take on that process?
Yeah. it's so the things that I make now tend to more or less map pretty well to how I'm imagining them.
Right.
When I was a bit younger, it annoyed me that they didn't quite align properly. It's like there's something like it was very much a
Yeah.
skill issue in that sense. But as you keep working through it, you get better and you become able to meet to meet the inner image and the outward image of sorts. It becomes easier to do. As for Sometimes, if you go off of the image or deviate away from the image, it does make interesting things happen. Those are, I would say, deeper. It's like that has almost nothing to do with the idea. I would say it's more like instinct taking over in those instances, and I those are always interesting. Um, Occurrences. Some people are more in tune to that than I am. That's for sure, though, because that has to do more with feeling and the like. And again, as I said in the past, I'm not. I'm kind of detached from my feelings, but yeah, it's always interesting whenever it does happen.
It is interesting. It's just such a, I guess alchemical is the best way to describe it. Like you're transmuting this idea into something real. It's so satisfying, and I love it when you get to talk to someone who does it, and you can see the moment, like you can see him do it, and it's just intriguing to me, like the whole alchemical process of that. Do you think that's the right word to use, alchemical?
Yeah. Alchemical transmuting one thing into a different state. Yes, or I guess a different state of
Yeah,
matter in that sense. But yes.
totally. What do you got coming up, Brendan? I mean, obviously you got some clients that you're working with, some you can talk about, some you can't talk about, but are there some current projects you have coming up that you're excited about?
Hmm. Let me see. Well, I don't know exactly where my philosophy is going. It is taking a naturally a life of its own. I've concluded that I have to get into like mathematics or something in order for it to continue, and that's been something I've been putting off for a long time. It's like there's got to be a way I don't have to touch mathematics, man. I really don't want to, but no, it seems like I kind of have to. As for when that'll happen, it'll likely happen after I plot out or maybe release this game idea that I've been hashing out for years at this point, and it's only just about last year that I've started putting at least some of the scripting and coding together. I had to take a break from it because I needed to make some more money, of course, but I'll be back into it eventually, sometime this year, no doubt. But yeah, game beyond game and philosophy slash math. Not much at the moment. I suppose I've also taken it upon myself to start a Substack because maybe I'll do something with that in the future. I think that's where I'm more than likely going to be hashing out some of the more usable or digestible ideas regarding my philosophy of things. But that's on hiatus until I stop thinking about the updates to the philosophy. But yeah, I guess those are the three things: game, philosophy slash math, and Substack. Those are the things that are constantly bouncing around in my head at the current moment. Yes, beyond
Yeah.
plan. Yes, yeah.
That's awesome, man. I happen to think that the film I saw was mesmerizing. I hope everybody within the sound of my voice, they not only go check out the film, but they subscribe to you. I hope they reach out to you. I hope that other podcasters, I know a few of them, that probably want to talk to you. And this is really awesome. I'm stoked on the work you're doing, Brandon. I think it's really cool, and I think it made me cry in some parts, man. That's real artwork right there. And so,
Yes.
congratulations on that. And as we're landing the plane here, man, I just wanted to give you a few more moments to, where can people find you, or is there anything particular coming up that you want to point people towards, or what do you think?
Well, I'm not particularly active on social media beyond LinkedIn. I don't know if people want to be following me on LinkedIn or anything like that. But given it's I don't know, people probably have a bad relationship with LinkedIn because it's all corporate and business stuff, but it's like, no, it doesn't have to be if you don't want it to be. Like
Yeah.
many other social media, it's about how you use it primarily. But you can find me there. I don't really post all that much, but I'm definitely active on it. Twitter, I have a Twitter account. It's I guess I should probably state what the what the links are actually. So LinkedIn, Brandon Singletary, Branden. Twitter, Nexumorphic, Nexumorphic. That's the moniker that I use for everything. If you look up Nexumorphic, you'll be able to find whatever I've posted on whatever website. That's all you have to look up because I don't have a centralized website, at least not yet, or at least I did, but paying for it became a bit of a hassle, so I'm not doing that anymore. It's way cleaner to not do that. But type that in. You'll be able to find all the things that I've made, minus the stuff that I've deleted. But yep. That's it.
That's awesome. Well, hang on briefly afterwards, Brandon. I still want to talk to you for a moment. But to everybody who's in the sound of my voice, go down to the show notes, check out the links, reach out to Brandon. Definitely check out his works. I think you'll find them mesmerizing. I know I did. And that's all we got for today, ladies and gentlemen. Have a beautiful day. Aloha.